Welcome to Syntax. Today we've got an awesome show for you today on how Node.js has been kicking ass lately. Lots of new features hitting Node.js, a lot of stuff we've been asking for years, and it kind of splits up into like A, aligning with web standards, and B, not web standards at all, but things that we all use anyways. It's sort of just like industry norms and they're being implemented. And a lot of these things are, we think, because Dino and Bun have sort of come along and said, hey, let's make a better Node.js. And now Node is adding them. So we're going to go through this massive list of new features that you can use natively in Node.js, and I'm pretty excited about them. My name is Wes Boss. I'm a web developer from Canada. With me, as always, is Scott Talinsky. How you doing, Scott?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm stoked for all this stuff. And in fact, some of these things make me want to update my Node version to a nightly version, which that's not out of the realm of something I would do, but not quite what I'm going to be doing. And let's say if you are updating your version of Node to a nightly version, you're definitely going to want to have error and exception handling tracking in your application, because who knows what's going on in those nightlies. So you'll want to check it out at sentry.io, the perfect place to track all of your errors and exceptions, but also track your performance, track metrics, track all kinds of stuff. You want to understand what's going on in your application, why it's slow. This is the place to do it. Why it's slow, why it's buggy. We both know it's slow and buggy. So let's fix that by having that visibility from Sentry. So head on over to sentry.io/syntax, sign up and get 2 months for free. And let's get into it. So first and foremost, you had mentioned, like, is this because Dino and Bun? And I think one thing that you'll notice through the course of this episode, that a lot of these features did arrive first in Dino or Bun. So it's not necessarily without question to say the competitive nature of these runtimes probably has influenced Node's continued improvement. Because honestly, I don't know if it's a very recent thing, because Node has always been kind of steadily improving. It does feel like in the past 6 months, 5 months, there's been a huge jump of some of these wild features that I don't think I would have ever predicted would have landed in Node.js.
Yeah. And we should also say that, like, Node is not a company, right? Like, it's just an organization, and it's run by
volunteers.
A team. Yeah, volunteers. And anyone can bring suggestions to Node and say, hey, maybe we should. So, like, there's been a lot of people that have been sort of fighting for it, or not necessarily fighting for it, but making a good case for adding these types of things to the runtime. And it's really exciting to see it take this direction.
Yeah, super exciting. And in fact, man, I don't know what we want to get up to the start, but I think the most exciting one to me is this first one that we have on the list, which is Node in their nightlies has added support for TypeScript files. And this is awesome. I should say the support is that it is able to run TypeScript files as JavaScript files, where the runtime itself is going to just ignore the TypeScript types exist, and it's going to just run it as JavaScript, meaning that your editor, your text editor, will now be able to get all of those classic TypeScript insights that you get from TypeScript. You can use TypeScript itself to run against your whole application to type check, but you don't need to build your TypeScript code into JavaScript code to get it to run in Node, which is a massive, massive productivity boost. We won't have to reach for a whole bundler or anything set up just to load up a stinking TypeScript file, which those are the times I reach for Bun, because it's like, I got a TypeScript file. I just want to run this dang file. I'm going to maybe write a singular script. I don't want to compile this script and then have to run the script. I just want to run the script that I'm writing. And this is where this new TypeScript support will really come in handy for me personally.
I'm really excited about this because like I use TSX right now, and anytime I have to use something that's like sort of outside Node, you have to add another like tooling to it. Yes. And when it's not native, then you have to realize, okay, well, I'm not using the native Node to run this, like literally Node command. Now, how do I do this? Like when the .env support came out in Node, which we'll talk about in just a sec. And I was like, okay, well, like, how do I pass these arguments to the thing I'm using so that they can then pass it to Node? And putting something else in between is kind of annoying. So we should also explain that how TypeScript works with a lot of these things. And it works this way in Dino, it works this way in Bun, now it works this way in Node, is that there's kind of like two parts to TypeScript. There is type checking, which is you take your TypeScript and you actually check that all of the types are satisfied and there is no errors. And the only thing that can do that right now is the TSC node package, the official TypeScript node package. There are no other tools. There are some being worked on, but they're sort of just pipe dreams that will be able to do that. But right now it's just TSC. And then there are lots of other tools, or several other tools, that will simply take your TypeScript and take out the types. They will strip them from the runtime and give you JavaScript out the other end. And then sort of in between that, there are several features of TypeScript that are compiled too. Because I often like to explain TypeScript as JavaScript with sprinkles on top, meaning that you sort of sprinkle on typings so that you can add a type system to JavaScript. But there are things like enums, the older TypeScript decorators, several, I think namespaces is another one, where they literally do compile to JavaScript, which is a bit of an odd one. And those things can be done in these build toolings, but they are not part of the Node.js support. And quite honestly, I think I like that because it's a pain if you use enums, but all of those like weird stepchild parts of TypeScript, I don't mess with. So I'm pretty excited about that. Plus, like, we're getting types as comments, or that is now a spec that's being proposed, meaning that JavaScript is being proposed that we give some syntax, we allocate parts of the language for typing, and the browser will not, and the JavaScript runtime is not going to parse them. It's not going to type check them. It's simply going to do what we just said, which is the browser will simply ignore them. That's why it's called types as comments, not because we write them in comments, but because the browser ignores them as if they were a comment. And I like that because the enum stuff and whatever is not going to be part of that as well. And if we're looking forward to what comes after TypeScript, I think that this is it.
Yeah. And what's so great about this, and to be clear for those of you who might not be entirely up on the differences and what exactly all this stuff is, again, this is not the JavaScript types as comments. This is not a language feature. This is a Node.js feature. So this code will not be ignored. The types will not be ignored in browser until it's added to browsers themselves. So this is just for
what's
Node.
added to the language.
Yes,
like it has
correct.
To be part of like the JavaScript runtime, like V8 must implement it.
What's interesting about this is that, technically, is that this uses SWC WASM TypeScript under the hood to do that stripping of the types. And I think that's really wild to see. Are things like SWC WASM being added to Node, is that a new style of improving Node, like bringing in a third-party WASM type stripper? It feels pretty crazy to me, but I don't know the history to know if there haven't been or has been things like this that have happened more often. But you can now be kind of assured that if you used SWC or bet on SWC for any particular reason, it's probably not going anywhere.
And the kind of cool thing about, if you read the proposal for this, and we should say this is all still experimental, but the idea here is that don't bake this into Node Core. But I think the idea is eventually it will be a loader, meaning that in Node.js, loaders are a way to tell it, hey, when somebody requires this type of file, you can use this code to first parse it and process it, right? Like somebody loads CSS, Node doesn't know about CSS, but you can put a loader in there so it will understand what to do with the CSS when somebody imports it or requires it. So the idea is like, it's not going to be like baked in to Node.js, very similar to how NPM is not baked in to Node.js, and they can be operated separately. And that's going to be ideal because then you're not going to be locked in TypeScript versions to Node versions. So I was surprised to see that this is not a loader. This is just some sort of other experimental implementation, but the end game is that this will be a loader.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. So this is not available to necessarily use unless you're grabbing a nightly right now, if you just want to go experiment with it. But for now, I think it's just something to be aware of. This thing is going to be coming down the line really soon, and we will update you when it is available to use in Node. The next one is something that I also did not expect. This is something that I would have expected to have gotten a lot of pushback. And this is adding SQLite to Node. And this is one of my favorite bun features. And one of the reasons why I would pick bun for various little things is because SQLite is just available as an import in bun. And it has been added to Node. Wes, can you tell us more?
Yeah. So you might be asking like why would we add a database driver to the language? That seems a bit odd. But because SQLite is so popular, I'm just joking. Honestly, though, we should just mispronounce things like that for the sake of a TikTok clip. Because SQLite is so uniform, it's on literally every device. There's chances are that there's a toaster out there. It's running on your phone. iMessage uses it. It's so commonplace that it's everywhere. It makes sense to sort of bake this in straight to the language so you can save it. And by default, it works with memory. You can also use it with external file. I don't know that it would probably works with like externally hosted SQLite. I haven't used it myself just yet, but I think this is great to have it right baked in because again, if we now have a standardized way to share data to a file that is not, I know we have local storage in IndexedDB, but we don't really have those in Node, do we? Now we have a standardized way that we can store and share data. What does that mean for different modules that want to sort of talk to each other?
Yeah, so it's super interesting. You can import SQLite from Node::SQLite. It was added in version 22.5. And Wes, I'm looking at that connection string, and it says that the location when you're doing essentially a connection here must either be stored in a file or in memory. So you can just have the value as being :memory: if you want it to be stored in memory. But for a file-backed database, the location must be a path to a file. So it doesn't say anything about if that path to a file is external or internal or whatever.
Probably uses the file system APIs. I think for most serverless, neither of these are going to be okay if you want it to persist past running. And I think, well, maybe that is okay because a lot of times you might be using this with a serverless function where the function starts, you'll create a quick SQLite database, you'll store a bunch of stuff, and then you'll send it along the way. But with these ephemeral hosts, serverless, edge compute, even box-based stuff that spins up multiple boxes, you're not going to be able to do that because they spin down and delete the files. It's the same reason why you can't store JPEGs that people have uploaded to your website on the actual box that you're running because they will be deleted and cleaned up before you run away.
Could be super handy if you're building even desktop applications. You can think Electron or Tori that have or I don't know if Tori has a node available, but let's say something like Electron that you have available node, you could have your data living in a database that's shipped with the application itself. Nice and easy.
Or even another thing I was thinking is the Raycast extensions. One of the Raycast extensions that I use is it takes a one-time passwords that get SMS to you and will autofill them into the browser, which is a thing on Safari. Such a great feature, but it's not a thing on all the other browsers. So what that extension does is it reads the SQLite database from your computer, which is your iMessage is a whole bunch of SQLite databases on your computer. So if you're writing Node scripts that need to not necessarily just save data, but sometimes you just simply need to parse data that is on a device.
Yeah. What about embedded devices as well?
Yeah. Is that where we're going with this? We've talked a lot about JavaScript running on embedded devices or JavaScript running on low power devices. Is that eventually where we're going with this type of thing?
Yeah. Need a database? You got Node? Yeah. Cool.
Next one we have here is .env support. So again, the frustrating thing about developing a Node application a year or 2 years ago is I would start a brand new Node application and I would say, okay, well, I need TSX to run. I'm going to do it in TypeScript. I need the .env because I put my environmental variables in a .env file and I need to be able to parse that and to put it into whatever. And there was like 3 or 4 of these, like you need these in every project. And it's kind of annoying when you just want to write a quick script. Now, Node has the ability to simply just, when you run Node, you can pass a --env file and it will pick up the path to it. And then it will populate and put all those environmental variables in so you can access them via process.env. whatever. Again, major update. And also, one of the cool things that people maybe don't recognize, like, yes, you can put tokens in there. You can put API keys and you can put passwords and database connection strings and all of that stuff that you're used to. But the other thing that you can put in .env files is node flags. So if you have features that you want to turn on in your Node environment, like for example, we're going to be talking about the experimental require module or the experimental WebSocket support. If you want to turn those features on, you used to have to like put them in your like npm script package, and you would have this huge ass long connection thing that you'd have to run. Now you can put those environmental variables in the node_options environmental variable, and they will get picked up because it's reading the .env file, which is really cool.
Yeah. Another, like you said, it's just one of those things we add to every single project, and getting away from that stuff is great. Another one of these is a test runner. You know, the whole, let me tell you, I had my fair share of issues with Jest in the past with, you know, having to compile my tests and things like that. Having a test runner baked into Node is one of those things that it feels like it flew way under the radar for most people. And I don't know why that is, but there's so much good stuff in here. It's just the package namespace is just node:test. And it works exactly like what you're used to. Test, the name of your test. Inside of there, you can do assertions like assert, strict equal. You can do all kinds of things, and to the point where like, I don't know what are the particular use cases for reaching for other testing individual libraries like vtest. I don't know why you would reach for vtest over just using Node's baked in testing, unless of course you were testing UI things. I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head here. I don't honestly know because I haven't used the Node testing. I don't write that many unit tests. I tend to go more towards end-to-end testing myself. But
I think like maybe like if you're using TSX, like you said, some of the client side stuff, but like it's crazy. Like you're telling me now that I can write my tests in TypeScript and have features turned on in a .env file.
Yeah.
And none of that requires some bizarre bundle compile to step. That was always the pain that everybody had with Jest, is that you had to literally compile your code first.
Yes.
With this, it's testing it as it's running on your actual server. And we're taking all of the middle ground out of the picture, and it's just straight running with a node, which is, I keep saying I can't believe it. I'm so happy about this, but like as you get into larger and larger applications, it's either, and you want to add something, it's just such a pain in the butt and things go wrong and ESM doesn't work in this specific use case. And there's gotchas here. And, oh, you actually are compiling to CJS and then you're running the test. None of that. We're all done with that.
It feels like a very short time ago that we were like, why can't we have tests baked in like Rust, or why can't we have this or that? And it's like so many of these things are here and we hardly even notice, which is just incredible. It's so funny. We just recorded an episode about CSS new stuff, and the same thing. It's like somehow relative color syntax, the fact that it landed in July slipped under the radar for me, and I'm staying up on this stuff. So it's incredible that all this stuff is just kind of moving along here.
I think a lot of the reason behind this is because these are decisions that you need to make early on in a project. And most people's projects are already running. And it's just not, a lot of the stuff is, if it's working, I'm not messing with it. Nobody wants to mess with build tools or testing or anything like that. But if you're starting a fresh, from scratch project, it's worth taking a look at the list that we're talking today and saying, which of these things can I go full native on?
Yeah. Next one here is watch mode, which, hey, I used to be called the Nodemon, and now I get to use watch mode baked into Node. It's crazy because, like, what else? Like, that's another thing. One more thing you install on every single project is something to watch your files for when you make a change. So we now have watch mode, which is as simple as just a -- watch flag. It's just a watch flag in your standard Node command. You even have a watch path if you want to watch a specific
You watch a whole
path.
folder.
Watch a folder, yeah. So man, that's incredible. You can even with watch path, you can have multiple paths too. You can use that flag multiple times. So you can say watch path, here's a path, and then watch another path, here's a path. Man, what Nodemon is dead. What are you going to use Nodemon for?
When this came out, I posted that, and like Remy Sharper's like, it's not totally dead, but with these tools, there's always like Nodemon is so full featured, and there's lots of little edge case use cases that people use it for. But for the high level, very simple watching a file and rerunning it when it changes, that's what most people need. And now that is totally baked in. And again, watching was always one of those pain in the butt things that was annoying with TypeScript, because you had to write it in TypeScript, compile it, put it in some other folder. Then the watcher had to see,
Yes.
Something in your compile folder changed. Let me now restart myself. And it's not a thing anymore. You can simply just watch a TypeScript file, which is good news.
Yes, it's great news. Yeah.
Next one we have here is Glob support. So globs in programming in general are the ability to sort of do like wildcard file matching, meaning that like give me everything with an extension of .js, or give me all the files that start with puppy and end in JPEG or JPEG. And being able to sort of, people always think they're regexes. They're not, but use this syntax to match files on your file system. For example, in the syntax website, we have a glob that will simply just look for all .md files that are in the markdown folder, and it pulls them all in, and we process each of the shows individually. Glob support is something that was in Node for many, many years, and it was never actually exposed as a public API until recently. And now we have full glob support in with the file system to read files off disk.
This one's so under my radar because we had a section in this episode at the end called Wishlist, and on my wish list was glob support or glob imports. We have them already. I just did not know. That's like one of my favorite features in Vite. I use it all the time to do like many of the same things you just mentioned. So yeah, glob imports are super duper handy, and I find myself reaching for them all the time. Another one that I new landed, but I didn't know to the extent of the support, is top level await. Now, top level await means that, you're typically working in a TypeScript file, and let's say you have a function that's at the exact, the root of the file. Would you call that the root?
Yeah. The root scope or module scope, I guess.
The module scope. Okay, so at the module, let's say you have a file, it's calling one function, and that file returns a promise. In the past, you would always have to do a .then on that to get the result. But now, with top-level await, you can simply just await that function. Now, top-level await, there's a whole post on it from Rich Harris about how it could be a foot gun, and I tend to agree with that because you don't always want to wait on the execution of one specific thing. You don't want to hold up things with an await. But I think if you know what you're doing with it, and you have a specific situation in which it comes in handy, top level await, I think to me, it makes things a lot more simple. Let's say you want to just import a specific file to initiate a connection or something like that. You could just await that connection in that file instead of having to create a function, then run that function for that to happen. So
the database connection one is the most common one that I hit all the time. Is like, I want to import DB from a file called .db. And the first time that I require that, I need you to make the connection and then return it. And it was always really annoying because instead of just importing DB from db.ts, you would have to import get DB from whatever. And then you would have to go inside of some sort of function and await that value. And the first time it would take a second to connect and return it. And then the rest of the time it would resolve immediately. being able to put this instantiating things, databases. If you have a class that needs to be instantiated the first time a module is required, that's always a huge bit of a pain. And you get into this like really weird where everything has to like import a go function or a start function, and none of that is needed anymore. And this was not like a pain point in Node.js for a long time, because you could do this type of stuff in CommonJS, but then when ESM came around, you couldn't do it, but now you finally can do it, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
But this is not actually not that new at all. It came out in 2021.
Yeah,
but
I didn't know
it's just
that.
one of those things that the whole like LTS, a lot of times that people don't adopt new Node features until it's in LTS. And Node.js has this feature where the even numbers of Node.js are going to go into LTS. So right now, Node version 20.16 is the LTS version, meaning that they will support it for, I believe it is like a year and a half. And if you are in a large company, you say, okay, we're gonna use that because it's gonna get security updates, it's gonna get updates for whatever we need, and then we'll have enough of a runway. We know that it's going to expire by this date, so then we can plan ahead. And then the odd numbers, which is like 21, that's sort of where they do all the development and whatnot. And then the odd numbers will never be promoted to long-term support. So you have to wait until a feature hits. That's often when you see a new feature, it'll be pushed out in both an odd and an even version. And that's because they want it to hit LTS as well.
Word.
What do we got next here? Experimental require module. This is another one of those ESM paper cuts. The whole getting ECMAScript modules in Node.js was a bit of a painful go through. And there is now, if you want to use ESM modules, which everybody should be using, it should be the default for absolutely everything. However, Node.js has this like old baggage where it's CommonJS by default. So if you write import whatever from Node.js and you run that file, it will break because Node.js expects CommonJS require syntax by default. So you have to create a package JSON, you have to go into the package JSON, and you have to set type of module. I have a little shortcut on my computer that does it immediately. You cannot even put type of module in your like npm init file so that it goes in by default. Very bizarre to me. So Node is experimenting with being able to detect if something is an ESM progress. So it'll take a look at your file and parse it out, maybe look if there's an import in there instead of a require, and then it will programmatically change it. They say that this does take a little bit of time on startup, so you should probably still put this in your package JSON type of module, but it's one of those paper cuts that Bun and Dino do not have, where you shouldn't have to know that it works like this, especially somebody coming brand new to Node.js. I have this with Python all the time. I'm always complaining. There's all these gotchas in Python that, you have to use this. Oh, didn't you use this? Make sure you have this. And it's just like, no, make it work.
No, make it work.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm curious about some of these other ones you have on here, because I don't know much about any of these you have on here. So do you want to just run through some of these? Yeah.
So another thing that landed maybe about a year and a half ago is all of the web request standards. So streams, form data, headers, request, response, and fetch. These APIs are web standards for creating requests and sending data from client to server or server to server. And having full support for all of these things means that we can write code that works in the browser, we can write code that works in Node.js, and a lot of these new frameworks, Node.js probably being one of my favorites, they're all built on these primitives that I just rattled off. And now that Node.js supports all of these things natively means that you can write a lot more cross-platform code rather than having to do the Node.js equivalent of it. It's a web standard, a web request and web response standard. Along with that is experimental WebSocket support, meaning that it will, if you want to use WebSockets from the client to the browser and vice versa, there used to be like a Node.js WebSocket version, and now there's a standard, which is in Node.js, but then there's an experimental client support as well, so that you can very easily talk between the browser and the actual client. So I'm hoping that lands in stable as well. But I love seeing that they're willing to at least experiment with a lot of these things. Last two we have here, we did a whole show on this, async local storage. The async context API is the standard version of this. And the async local storage was the one that hit Node before any of this was standardized. So we do not see it being added to Node just yet, but I bet we will see it soon. But what this API allows you to do is to sort of stick stuff in the call stack. So if you have one function that calls another function, or if you have middleware where one function runs and the next one and the next one, you can stick stuff into context or into async local storage. Bad name, has nothing to do with local storage. And then you can access it anywhere down the call stack, meaning that anywhere within the request or anywhere within a function calling another one. And that's really nice because it means you don't have to pass your data into every single function that you write. It's sort of just available to you, and it's scoped to the call stack, or it's scoped to the request in a lot of use cases. So
it's like context for your server.
Yeah, it's like context, and it's standard context, meaning that if a package wants to use context and your own code wants to use context, you're not like coming up with your own version of context and having to pass the svelte context into some other weird function that you're running. Single file executables. I asked on Twitter, like, hey, what do you want in Node? And someone's like, well, I want single file executables. And we've had this for maybe about a year now. And what this allows you to do is you can take the entire Node.js runtime and you can take your entire Node.js application and you can take all of your Node modules and bundle it up into a single package that is a single file. And then you can bring that to different computers. And that's really nice because you don't have to have people install Node.js on their computer in order to run it. And that is often a case with if you write some tooling and you need it to run on somebody's computer locally rather than on a server remotely, you can just give them this file and it will run. It's contained. It is fairly large. It's up to like 90 megs, but that's not even touching like Electron, which is sort of a lot of the alternative to this type of thing.
Yeah, word. Cool. Well, let's get into our wish list here. What are things that we want to see? My first one was Glob imports, which we already have. So, yeah. No, you had one that was hot reload. And how would hot reload work in this context?
I don't know. The problem that I've had in the past with long-running Node applications is that if you make a change to the Node application, what happens is that the entire application stops and has to restart itself again. It has to do the database connection and that type of thing. And with hot reload, if you make a change to a function, like let's say you're dealing with a event handler, and somebody visits this URL, they fire an event, and you want to reply with some JSON. If you change just that code, the whole thing shouldn't have to restart itself. And a lot of frameworks are getting better at this so that they will simply just they will dynamically require that function that needs to happen on a handler so that you don't have to do that restart. So that was a big version. And then also like my computer is getting really fast, so it's not much of an issue. But my Express app before I got the MacBook M1 would take 2 seconds to like restart the TypeScript server and wait for the file watcher to change. So now that a lot of this stuff is built in, we don't have to worry about that time. And my computer is much faster at restarting, so it's not really that much of an issue anymore.
Yeah, it is funny how things change here. Yeah, well, another one might have been like a window shim. I think that's interesting because a lot of libraries, they do still use window dot things, which will fail if you try to use it on Node, even if the code will work on desktop, or even like, let's say you're in a server-side rendering context and you want to set something, you want to just use window. You always have to check to make sure you're in the browser. A way that you can get around this today is by using global this, but global this is essentially putting something onto the global namespace, which would include what's on window, correct?
Yes. So global this is the spec for doing things isomorphically, meaning that you write code on the server and on the thing, but like nobody's typing global this. People are often just typing window dot something. And again, that's another paper cut that we hit in Node.js land. That's not an issue. Dino is taking it even further where like they've shimmed prompt and confirm to show you CLI approvals, which is kind of nifty.
Yeah. Wow.
Another thing I would love is like a better server. So if I'm using Bun or Dino, their like default server, HTTP server is good enough just for a quick server. And I don't feel that way about the built-in HTTP server. And I'll usually go and grab some sort of lightweight server or even like a Node.js to throw that in there. So it'd be nice to have that built in. And then my last one here is like better console log or better terminal integration, because the console log in the browser is so good. And then a console log in your terminal sucks. And it doesn't show you where it's being logged from. The setup to get VS Code working with it, there's auto detect in VS Code, but again, it's still kind of tricky to get up and running. And then, or if you want like the Chrome dev tools, you have to like set up the -- inspect or -- debug flag. And then when that restarts, the Chrome dev tools has to like reconnect to it. So there's this other Chrome extension called NIM, Node Inspector Monitor, that has to like watch for those and it will auto reconnect to it. And it's just like, I just want to see what line something was console logged on. I just want my like console.table works, I want like a couple more things. And I think it's a bit of a limitation of terminals as well as Node.js, but I would love if like Warp just took like some of the, I don't even know how this would work, but like Warp, the terminal, take the Chrome dev tools or something and just make it work so that when I do something in whatever, or I can fold a stack trace or something.
Folding.
If I have an object, I shouldn't have to use console.dir dep
or JSON stringify.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to use that to like see an object more than 4 levels deep. And again, I realize there are lots of debugging tools out there, but they all require too much setup. And in larger projects, it's worth it for me. But as somebody who is slinging brand new projects several times a day so that I can talk to you guys about it, it's too tricky.
Yeah, I agree. Specifically that object thing, that always bugs the life out of me when I'm consoling. Like I'll just like quickly log something out and it's just like object. I'm like, okay, great. Thank you for logging and telling me it's an object. One thing that I really appreciate about the new Svelte 5 is that they have a better console log, which is called inspect. And it's like a rune that you just do inspect. I don't like that I have to type something new that's not console log and have my muscle memory. But what's cool about inspect is that it watches values. Anytime that value changes, it'll say, all right, this is the value init. And then if that value changes, it'll say updated and have that. Like, it's just a more full-featured logging system for what's going on. Not that I want that in Node specifically, but I do think there is some maybe out-of-the-box thinking that could happen to make the Node console experience better, to give us better debugging.
On that same point, I forgot this one, is Node rolled out utils:\style text. Everybody uses Node colors to like style text.
Chalk.
Yeah, or chalk. So now you can use the Node style text API to change the colors. But I think it's a bit of a miss because it's so much more verbose. Like chalk is a way better API. Like why don't you just copy the chalk API? And then also, like, why don't you just copy the browser API, which is you can pass it CSS.
Yeah.
And it will console log it with CSS. And Dino does that. You can pass it %C fetching data. And then in the second argument of console log, you can say background color red, text color white. I don't know how to do CSS. And it will match it as close as it possibly can to what's called ANSI colors. Those are the colors available to you in the terminal, and it will log it out for you. So like, just give us that, if we're trying to web standards this whole thing, just let me use CSS to do it. And like, couldn't Warp pick up a custom CSS color and display that to me? We should go past ANSI.
Yeah, I
I'm just
agree
mad
on all
now.
that. I don't know if Warp will ever get into that stuff. What's funny is that like Warp is, I don't want to say controversial, but maybe, anytime you bring up Warp in general, people get like not real terminal, even though it's like
because
really
you have to log in.
You got to log into your terminal.
I get that.
I don't care. I log into everything.
And I understand why that they're doing that. It's because they want to sell you team features.
I
they
get
want
why
to charge
people
you
would be
$5
mad
a month
about it.
per user, and that's every single startup right now wants to do that. So by aggressively putting you into an account, even though I use 0 of the account features, but for me, I don't care because it's worth it to me. Warp is so good. So
yeah, number one Warp feature to me, being able to select text and delete it, or click and use my text editor, or use my prompt as like an actual text input rather than just this archaic Command A, Command K, all
click.
This like, yes. Yeah. Let me click on things for sure. I don't know, if that's something that normal people care about, but there's a handful of times where like, you mess up a script ever so slightly and it's a long ass thing that you've just typed in. And now I can just select where I want my mouse cursor to go and fix or, group select or whatever. So yeah, Warp for me, pretty dope.
All right, let's move into some. Oh, hold on. Actually, I asked on Twitter what people wanted. Let's rattle through those.
Yeah,
Nice.
See if there's
any
call.
Good ones. All right, I asked on Twitter, what's your Node.js wish list right now? And it's kind of interesting to see what people say. Someone said cheap cPanel hosting, Coolify, definitely saving us from that. I should tell you, my like Bluehost hosting, which I hate, but I've had it for probably 15 years, and there's like, I've got my wife's website on it. My dad hosts a couple websites on it. I've always been like, you're allowed to host as many WordPress websites on there as possible. And the other day I got an email from them being like, you're over your hosting limit for gigabytes. And I was like over 15 gigs of space. And they're like, you'll be automatically upgraded to our next tier. I was like, oh no, like they're squeezing us. They're the last one to squeeze us, realizing that selling somebody a server that you can run unlimited websites on is probably not getting as much money as you could if you charge $5 a user per website, per user, per month, per week, per dog. So Coolify, is saving us from that type of thing. Bundle to ship executables. You can do it. This is a tweet that I did over a year ago. And this might be, besides my sock tweet, my most viral tweet ever. Because
crazy.
People lost their minds because it was 85 megs as a hello world. But even like a Go hello world. By the way, it's smaller now. You can get it down quite a bit, especially if you take out all the INTL stuff. So that if you're not doing international translation for Arabic, you can take out that stuff and it will get much smaller. But the reason it's so big is because you need the JavaScript runtime to run JavaScript. It's not being compiled into machine code. So you still need that. Anyways, TS support incoming is good. People are happy. Affordable housing market. Native ES decorators. That is something coming to the import. We talked about this a while ago, a couple episodes ago, on import something as text or import something as CSS. So that's kind of cool. I don't think that is been spec'd out yet, though. Is that finished? So like, it's not going to land in Node until it hits the JavaScript language. Mature de facto web framework that fills the Rails void. All right, so like this is not Node itself, but like this kind of the community, right? Somebody wants a Laravel or Rails of JavaScript. What else we got in here? Pipes. This would be amazing. So pipes are being added or being talked about being added to JavaScript for many, many years. And that would allow, it's not part of the JavaScript yet, so it will not be part of Node, but it's kind of cool because you'll be able to do things like when you chain a map filter reduce, and then you want to pass that output to something, you have to wrap the whole thing in like a console log or in a display text. Piping
I'm
will allow
wondering
you
if
to just continue to pipe.
Sorry, I'm wondering if Dax is talking about like Golang style pipes, or if he's talking about.
What's Golang style? Golang pipes.
It's basically you're streaming data from one spot to another. You pass something into a pipe and it goes in that pipe.
We have stream. Isn't that streams though? Like
I
that was part
think
of.
there's. I'm not going to speak on that because there's subtleties here that I'm not aware of. But I know people who use Go really like pipe in Go.
Oh.
But I don't know if that's what he's even talking about. So I don't want to put words in Dax's mouth. But when I first read pipes, that's what I thought he was talking about.
NVM out of the box. So that's versioning your Node version. I don't think they'll ever do that because that's so specific.
Yeah. They even on the official Node install page, they suggest using NVM directly. So,
oh, yeah. I still use N.
I don't use anything. I just install one version globally for my whole machine and
really?
Then abandon old projects because they might not work. Oh,
man. I use N a lot because, like, for example, the TypeScript support dropped the other day, and I quickly just did N nightly and installed the nightly version. I was able to show the TypeScript code running in Node in the video right away without having to, like, override my global Node version. Remove it from existence. ESM only. Honestly, I think we should do this.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Although, I don't know.
I know that's a controversial opinion of mine. Yeah. I
think people say this, but then they don't realize that like their Next.js is still running in CommonJS. You know,
mine
like,
isn't.
Yeah, you author your ESM, but you got a lot of bundling under the hood, and like everything is supported on this one Node package that hasn't been updated in 12 years, and it would totally crumble.
Realistically, that's tougher than theoretically.
Totally. Yeah, it's an ideal. But that's it. Node is doing super well right now. Couldn't be more excited for the sort of JavaScript server-side space in general. But let's get into some sick picks.
Yeah, I got a sick pick. So we had a guest on, Anna Poblitz from 1Password, and she sick picked a board game, which was Cascadia. Now, our family isn't like, there's like board game people who are like really into niche board games.
Oh, yeah, that's my wife. She loves games, and I couldn't.
Okay.
I hate it so much, games. When we went to the Sentry office, Sentry made like a card game, and I was like, just so you know, I hate games, but I'll still win. And I won.
Yeah, and that made me really mad because the whole time you're like, I don't like this, and then you were winning, and you're just like, okay, let's cram in here. Now, I like games. I'm a game guy, but I'm not like a niche game guy. But I took a chance on the Cascadia, which is a game that Anna recommended because it sounded like something my kids might like. And at first, it was like, all right, I think the intended age might have been like 8 and up or something like that. So it, our kids being 5 and 7 didn't really fit, but I went for it anyways. And our kids really picked it up. It's about like you're building kind of like wildlife habitats where you get combinations of squares for maybe this is a specific environment and the eagle can live in here, and you're building all these patterns. So like an eagle can't be next to another eagle. And if you have 2 eagles, you get 8 points or whatever. And at the end of the thing, you tally up your points. So you each have your own little environment that you're building. And our kids have picked it up really, really well to the point where they're having a chance at actually beating Courtney and I at this game, even though it's rules-wise, it wasn't that simple. They just like the idea of like, it's animals. Oh, I want to build a row of salmon here because they're pink. Okay, and that, got my daughter a lot of points. Or I want this eagle so bad. All right, where do I put the eagle? I put it here. And gosh, it was just a really great kind of calming, relaxing game that still involves like personal competition. So when we're all like trying our own strategies and trying to win, it was just a lot of fun. So if you're into board games and haven't checked out Cascadia, give it a try. I thought it was really great. Or if you're just looking for something that is fun for the whole family, yeah, I found this to be really great.
Oh, that seems like something I would fake an injury to try to get out of.
We ended up buying it for our sister-in-law, my sister-in-law, and their family really liked it too. So,
kill me. That sounds awful. Anyways, I'm sure it's fun. Maybe I should give it another try. I'm going to sick pick a Roborock vacuum again. So probably about a year ago, I sick picked the Roborock S8 Pro Ultra, which is the like Cadillac of vacuums, and it has improved our life so much because the amount of time saved, like I think we have like 400 hours on it. And if you were to even spend like a tenth of those hours yourself vacuuming, that's quite a bit of time that you save. And it's been such a game changer in our house. It's expensive, but it's been such a game changer in our house for just always having super clean floors and also not getting stressed out when the kids drop something on the ground or they spill something. It's not a big deal because the little bee-bot will come and suck it on up. So we've had that one for maybe a year and a half, and we've been loving it. And I was doing the like YouTube thing because we wanted to get one for the cottage, but I was like, there's no chance we're spending, I think it's like $1,800 Canadian. There is another one called the Roborock Q Revo. And this one does all the things that the Pro Ultra does, meaning it mops, it vacuums, it has a freshwater tank and a dirty tank, and it has bags. Meaning that like you have to just change the bag once a month. You got to change the water maybe once a week or so, depending on how much you use it. And this one's like $1,000 less. And I was like, okay. And a lot of people are saying it's just as good as a mopping and vacuuming. It just doesn't have some of the LiDAR in it that does the sensing. And I'll tell you right now, the expensive one sensing is not very good. It still sucks up our cords. You still got to run around and make sure there's not a cord on the ground because it will suck it right up. So we got the Q Revo, and it's just as good. It's 94% as good. I feel like it sucks up the cords a little bit more than the other one. The other one, every now and then, 1 in 10 times, it will like be like, oh, I shouldn't suck up a cord, and it'll turn away. This one, 100% of the time, it will suck up a cord. But if you keep the cords off the ground, this thing is amazing. And for $1,000 less, I would probably recommend you don't upgrade to the other one. It's even the tank is bigger. The freshwater tank is bigger. So
I wish mine had a water tank. I have the Roborock 6, maybe. I got it Costco special a few years ago, and I love it. The only downside of it is that it does not have a water tank, so I'm like constantly having to fill up the water almost every day. Yeah.
You just like maybe once a week, depends on how often. We run ours at probably 2 or 3 times a day. Run it after breakfast, and we run it after dinner, and then often we'll do it. I'll bring it down to my office. So what you need to do, Scott, is bring it to your office.
Yes.
I even put it in the gym. Yeah. We've got these like rubber mats in the gym.
Yeah.
And it just does such a perfect job at scrubbing the mats and making everything feel good. So
I still need to get some mats for my gym because we're just rocking on carpet right now. If I felt like throwing away money, I would get a second one, but mine is like too functional and too good to justify it. But yeah, I do. The thing I love the most about the Roborock system, or even having that little mop dragging arm or whatever, like for me, it's just like a little mop pad that you have a little water tank and whatever drags behind it. The thing that it does the best for me is like kitchen sticky spots or whatever. With kids, stuff is ending up on the floor all the time. And if the robot is not running for like a week because maybe it sucked up something and I haven't done maintenance on it, then I notice very clearly the kitchen floor is getting worse and worse all the time. But then when it runs, it's like you don't even notice it. It's like, wow, these floors are actually feel clean. You wouldn't think that a little tiny mop dragger would work that well, but it works really, really pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. The Pro Ultra it vibrates. It goes. And the Pro Ultra also has 2 vacuum head spinners, and the Q Revo has 1. Again, I haven't noticed a difference, and our kids are very messy. But the Q Revo has spinning mop pads, like it spins in circles, 2 of them. And I feel like that's better because it's constantly actually moving over it. And like it also has like a pin feature. So like if the kids drip or if I drip coffee, I've done it too. You can just open the app and pin it on the map, and it will just run over there. It'll do like a meter square and then go back and clean itself.
Oh, that's cool. We just have room. I don't have like ability to pin. I can just say, hey, go do this
Oh
room
yeah.
real quick. But that's even
Problem
handy.
with tech. The problem with tech is that I don't want my vacuum to go out of date. You know,
My vacuum has gone out
I
of
don't
date. And
want
it's
my
like not even
car
2 years old.
depreciate. I don't want to know about any new cars anymore. I have my new one. I don't want to hear about any features on new ones. I don't care. I don't want to have the iPhone effect on everything in my life.
Yeah, I know that is it, right? All right. Well, shameless plugs. Check us out on YouTube, Syntax at Syntax FM on YouTube, youtube.com/at Syntax FM. We post all these episodes on YouTube, and sometimes we show code, and we do a lot of fun stuff over there. Not only that, but we are cooking up a ton of additional stuff over there. CJ just released a video at the day of recording this on tree shaking. So it's been really, really pretty awesome. I've been doing some videos on Local First, and we have just a ton of stuff coming down the line. So follow us on YouTube. If you like our voices and you like the way we describe things, we'll give you that much more of it. So check it out.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Peace.
Peace.